Welcome to the Seahawkers podcast. I am your host, Clinton Bonner. I am joined by Adam Emmerich. Adam, we have a fun little topic. We're going to fire off to the Flockers. We got the flagship show coming out tomorrow morning. We're going to record this and put this out on a Wednesday night because maybe, Adam, maybe we were just fired up about our Seahawks being 2-0. How you doing, bud?
Yeah, I can't imagine there's a 12 out there that's not at least 80% excited after a hot start for the Seahawks in terms of record. That's cool. I know that you're fired up about a few different things, including the great JSN. And you were looking at some fantasy things that you think may be, I don't know, either interesting or eye-opening or just straight up applicable. So I'm curious to know, Clinton, where you got this information, why you think that fantasy coincides with reality and actually has a bearing, and what you got, man. I'm looking forward to this.
For sure, man. Call me dear Mr. Fantasy. Just don't call me, late for dinner there, right? And of course, folks, remember out there on YouTube, youtube.com/Seahawkers podcast. Every single video, everything we do is heading out there, and you can get our audio everywhere as well. Hit the likes, hit the subscribes. It means a ton, and we are storming now to 5K. So let's get to 5K. Yeah, so I am a big fantasy football player. I live in the realm of fantasy. This year I play in 4 different leagues, including our awesome Seahawkers podcast Ring of Honor League, which is a 2-tier league, a tier 1 and tier 2. Right now I'm in tier 2. That's okay. We're going to battle back. It's a relegation system. It's a ton of fun. So I'm in 4 different leagues. So yes, I consume podcasts and other things that are fantasy relevant. There's a very popular show out there. It's, CBS Fantasy Football, like Fantasy Football Today, been on forever. A couple of years ago now, a guy named Jacob Gibbs, who you can find out on Twitter. He's always been like one of their producers, sets the show up. And he started a little side article that was called Beyond the Box Score. And now it's become actually a Monday feature, or maybe a Tuesday, where they run like an hour-long show to dive into really the nooks and crannies and deeper elements of what's the stats behind the glory stats, and can you predict based on what you're seeing. So this week, guess who he covered, Adam, for a good, I'd say 5 to 7 minutes.
Well, it wasn't my mom, so I think that one's probably out. But yeah, it sounded like by your texts and your excitement level through text, I'm going to go with Jackson Smith and Jigba, and I'm excited to hear what you come up with here.
Yeah, well, again, credit where due
Sure.
to Jacob Gibbs and Beyond the Box Score on the Fantasy Football Today, CBS Fantasy. But what I'm going to do, he shared a couple of these very interesting metrics about JSN's ascension. That's a nice way to say it. And what I want to do is give them to you one by one, get your vibes on them, get your feelings, and kind of an importance factor. Do you think it's a predictable indicator for maybe what is to come for JSN? How's that sound to you?
Yeah, let's do it, bud.
All right. So the first thing that he brought up, now you got to remember, when you hear the year 2000, doesn't sound like it's that long ago, right? It still feels kind of recent, 2000.
Yeah, I know, because we're old people. And so, yes, 2000 doesn't sound like a long time ago, but it was a quarter of a century ago. So, yeah.
Correct. Really good way to put it, right? 24 years ago now, right? So from the season of 2000, which is then the 25 seasons in, right? So since the season of 2000, only 39 times, not 39 wide receivers, 39 times has a wide receiver under the age of 23 or younger had 15 plus targets in a game and 100 yards receiving in that same game. So we're talking about 1.5 times a year since the year 2000. JSN did it last week. How does that one tickle you?
So basically 40 guys since 2000 have had a game similar to JSN in their first 2 years.
Basically, right? Because you got to figure they're probably under 23. Yeah.
Okay. I would love to see what happened to those other 39 dudes in their career going forward from that point. I think that would be very telling to, how much of that actually predicts future success. I don't know. To be honest, that one doesn't really speak to me much. Like 40 dudes, that's quite a few. I imagine a bunch of those dudes were one-hit wonders. And look, with all that said too, I mean, how many times has JSN done this?
One.
One? Okay.
One.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we got some more stats about that too. And remember, it's not 39 other dudes. It is 39 times. So there's guys on there that they've done it 2, 3, 4 times,
Sure.
and it counts in that 39.
All right.
So
So let's say it was even a
30.
third of
Let's
the
say 30.
dudes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're talking 12, 11 dudes that have done it multiple times and the rest of them did it once.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay. Yeah.
Sounds about right. So
Yeah, wake me when he does it again.
okay, fair. Totally fair. I love that. So doesn't on the tickleometer of 1 to
Yeah.
10, you're not out of bed yet. Maybe a 1.5. It's not really waking you up
It's
just
cool.
yet. So
Don't get me
yeah,
wrong.
no, I get
Congratulations
it.
to JSN, and that's awesome. I was fired up about his performance, but
Yeah,
it's a data point of one.
sure. Okay, there we go. All right. Point number 2, right? Deep metric number 2. Last year, JSN's route participation rate, right? So that's of all the routes that are out there, how many times is he on the field participating in routes run? Last year, he capped out at for the year 64%.
Okay.
Okay. This year, 2 games in, his route participation is now up to 92%.
Mhm.
So that's obviously a really nice gain right there unto itself. A 2-part question. How does it tickle you in terms of projecting JSN going forward? And is it simply a matter of tons of 11, way less 12, or is it coming at the expense of some of Tyler's targets from what you've been able to witness, or not even targets, route participation?
Sure. So on a scale of 1 to 12, this hits me at about an 8 or a 9. So pretty high.
Ooh,
Like,
okay.
yeah, pretty high. This is something that does excite me because one of the things that I was frustrated with the JSN pick last year and then inserting him into Shane Waldron's offense is
Ugh.
that Shane Waldron seemed to not understand what type of athlete that he was dealing with and kept running him out there on bubbles. I don't think that's his game necessarily. He is a smooth, sneaky, get open every time down the field kind of receiver, not necessarily a Julian Edelman, Wes Welker type in the slot that's going to jerk you out of your shoes. Like, I don't think that's his game. So also, it sounds as if the JSN then went on the field in Waldron's office, was participating in a lot of run plays and not getting out in the pattern. And what a waste of a guy who is not necessarily a huge dude built for blocking. Like, let's get him out there doing what he does best. And one of the things I was hopeful about with Grubb was that he was going to be able to tap into the potential that everybody that watched him in college and all the college experts were spouting that he had. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, that sounds great. Now let's see it. And unfortunately, we didn't get to see too much of it last year, but not a ton of it in week 1. But then again, it was a different type of game. And then in week 2, boom, there it is. We see that they lean into his young skill set heavy. And I think that's nothing but a boon for the Seahawks going forward. And in terms of how that affects Tyler, I've kind of joked on the PNW Prop Stars, our betting show, that is, again, another way to look at things like this fantasy angle, but
Yep.
maybe shed some truth into actual football. I think that with Tyler and DK and JSN, when you're gambling on them or trying to predict who's going to get the most catches and have the routes and all of that stuff, I think it's going to vary dramatically week to week for when they adjust to whatever that particular defense they're facing that week tries to take away. So I think DK, you're probably going to see the most consistent in terms of targets and routes run and all of those things. But when it comes down to JSN and Tyler, I think it's going to be kind of who's got the hot hand, what the defense is trying to do to you, and ride it from there.
Yeah. Do they have a strong nickel game going on or not? Do they have a strong slot corner? And while JSN's not always in the slot, he certainly lines up outside now as well. He's gonna be living in the slot at least certainly more than DK will be, right? And then of course Tyler gets moved inside every now and again, but Tyler doesn't like to take the hits, which we understand. Couple things you said there that piqued me. First of all, this is how good of a partner you are here, man. I come out of the show and say, "Hey, how does that tickle you 1 to 10?" You don't berate me. You just say in your smooth way, "Hey, on a scale of 1 to 12." I mean,
Yeah.
because hey, it's a Seahawks show, and that you're at like an 8 or 9 there, like around an 8. So about 3/4 tickled to the full hawker to get out of bed. Pretty interesting. And then you start to, the other thing you talked about too was Waldron, and watching after the Seahawks beat the Patriots in overtime. We got to head back to the hotel. We had some pretty delicious subs, and we were watching Waldron's offense, I guess you could say, and Caleb struggle. And boy, did that look similar? Did that look familiar? And yeah, JSN just ran a bunch of drags last year, or bubbles, but
Drags and
not a lot of
bubbles.
stuff. Yeah, drags and bubbles, and not a lot of stuff where he had really strong momentum. Even in the play, one of the most awesome plays of the game was the one where Sharps, they're in shotgun, and Sharps cuts over and gets that clip block just in time on Geno's right hand side. And Geno does like a Brady shuffle in the pocket, but horizontally to the left, and throws a seed like 18 yards down the middle to JSN. When JSN catches that ball, he is so savvy. Like, A, secures the ball. Great. He actually gets like 7 yards of yak in between like two safeties and a corner. It's pretty remarkable that even in that kind of traffic, he has these subtle little moves to still get the very most you possibly could. Like, the whole play was, wow, that was some genius, great block by Sharps, beautiful, beautiful footwork by Geno. And yeah, JSN secures it. But as I rewatched it, I was like, man, I was like, he got 7 extra yards after the catch, and he was surrounded by dudes. Kind of talking to the special sauce that you were getting at, man.
Yeah, look, especially on that particular play, secures the ball just as you said. And while getting that 7 extra yards by more or less falling forward, also getting down and protecting himself.
Yeah.
It's a combination of all of those things that you can't teach. Like, that's all instinctual stuff. And that's something that was lauded about his game coming out of OSU. And we're starting to really finally get to see it show up. And I think that's super exciting.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Okay. So we are 2 out of 3 so far. Did I do a Vanessa here and save the best for last? You may be old if you get that reference, but here we are. Deep metric number 3. So how do I want to phrase this? Okay. Yes, I'll go this way. Last week against the Patriots, JSN had 172 air yards. Now, if I say air yards, do you know what I mean by that?
Wherever the quarterback lets it go from to where he catches it, we're not taking into account yak or any of that stuff.
Even if it's incomplete, that's also the part of the equation.
Do they give you credit for the air yard if you drop it?
Yes, because it's incomplete. It's just air yards. It's just, even if you flat out drop it, because that's variance, right? You're going to drop some, and hopefully you drop less than we did this last week. Okay. It's just an indication of how many times are you getting the ball, and then really how far downfield with the air yards. So last week, 172 air yards to JSN. Now, last year, his career high was 119. Okay, that's number 1. However, this part of the story, I think, is probably the most impactful. Last year, there were only 2 games in which he went over 50 air yards. 50. So triples what he was doing last year all the time, smokes his record from 119 to 172. And that's the third deep metric that indicates that, hey, maybe the JSN jump is really coming. So, okay, that's number 3. Scale of 1 to 12. How does it hit you?
Scale of 1 to 12. How does that hit me? It's got to be very similar to the last one, because honestly, in a lot of ways, I think they point to the exact same thing, which is he's, instead of being out there and running short little routes or not running a route at all, he's getting downfield. We're using the verticality that he can bring to the game. And I think it's also an indication of the way that Ryan Grubb likes to play offense. One of the things we did see at UW is he likes to attack vertically, that he wants to stretch the field more so that way than horizontally, which I think Waldron was trying to go the other direction. And whether or not that works out in the end, I'm not entirely sure. But with that said, it does allow for a lot more big plays, and he's got the quarterback to run it. And that can only help JSN going forward. And if he can just get that tiniest bit of separation, Geno's gonna find him. You mentioned the throw on the last one that you brought up there, and that was beyond a tight window throw. That's an A++ NFL throw. And we saw in the preseason the little fade route that JSN ran, a plus NFL throw. If JSN can be vertical, and use that special skill that he has of lulling dudes to sleep and just magically getting open. It's very Tyler-esque that way.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, yeah, being a little further downfield, I'll take the extra yards every time when Geno finds him.
Yeah, and he's got those late hands. He could really hide it, right? Like you're
All
saying,
professional stuff.
all the professional stuff. And this is a game too where everybody wants to point to, everybody. I put a post up in for at YouTube. You could send some posts out now and create a little artwork about DK jumping over the Patriots defender on the sideline there, and my post was something along the lines of the DK hurts the team crowd is awful quiet this week or something like that, right? And there were still people commenting on that, being like, "Well, he had 2 drops and a
He
penalty."
did.
He did, but JSN had 2 drops, and he had 2 drops down the sideline. One was that back shoulder that he could have and should have caught, and one was a different floater that was defended well, but still hit him in the hands.
Gotta
To your
catch
point, though, and to your point, by the way, those count for air yards, which is that's how those go into there. But to your point, all balls were like dead spot on. They were so accurate from Geno, and Geno did not have. It wasn't clean. He was still under quite a bit of pressure, finding his way out of there. Pretty good, but I think a lesser quarterback, man, would make that offensive line look bad. It's bad to, let's say, bad to but still below average from their first 2 performances. I have one more stat for you. It has nothing to do with JSN. Just speaking of clean pockets, do you know which quarterback had the cleanest protection last week out of the entire NFL?
the cleanest. Derek Carr.
Not Derek Carr. I'll give you one more guess.
Geno Smith.
Not Geno Smith. No,
Okay.
Geno.
Well, yeah. I didn't know if it was like the low-hanging fruit that I was missing there. So, okay, because I was like, that doesn't feel right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Geno was under still a good amount of pressure. And this is the point. The point of like good to great quarterbacking versus like someone who's just lost. Bryce Young had the cleanest pocket percentage. Yeah. Yikes.
That's
I mean,
tough.
there's a reason he's benched, but that's big yikes territory when statistically it's like you had the cleanest vision, cleanest pocket, and you still bail. That ain't Geno, man. So to your point, the compliments from the complementary football, the dynamic between Geno, who knows how to buy enough time in the pocket and then still make the ballsy throw. JSN's not a burner, but he has that professional separationism, if you will, and the late hands. And it's and I think it's just starting to not just percolate. I think we saw what it could look like all the time last week. Now, to your point earlier, hey,
I got one question for that. Though.
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you think the percentage of probability is that this turns into this 2-game sample size that we have? This turns into a season, a body of work for a season. Like, where's your confidence level on that?
So question, I'll answer your question with a question. Does it have to be this year? Are you saying this year or are you saying in his career?
Oh, I was thinking this year, but if you want to go career, I'm on board. Yeah.
Yeah. So this year I'd put it at about 40% this year. That's kind of what we saw on Sunday live, by the way, with each other, sitting next to each other. It was fun.
Yeah.
Holding hands. We weren't doing that, but it's fine. We can imagine. We should have held hands.
Yeah.
But I put it at about 40%. And I think it's because of what you said earlier. You still have Lockett, and you saw what happened in game 1. Grubb, I think, is going to look at matchups and be like, this is a mismatch. I'm going to exploit the crap out of that. And some weeks it just won't be JSN's matchup. So that's kind of why I put it around, a 40%, maybe even a little lower because of what I just said, that becomes the average or like the norm for him throughout the year versus burst games where he does this 6 or 7 times, but other times he's just pretty quiet.
And what if I lower the bar to like 80-yard games, 80 yards and up?
Yeah, it's still heavy because, it doesn't sound like a lot, but when you look at
a lot.
Yeah, exactly. When you look at a 17-game schedule and you just assume health, then you're talking that's a 1,300 and almost a 1,400-yard year if you
Big
can
year.
average 80 yards. So I think I'm still at that 40% marker. I don't
Okay.
think he gets there this year. That would not shock me if he's at 1,150 or 1,200, which, hey, okay, I put that more around 60 or 70% at this point, which could be fantastic. But no, I don't see a 1,400-yard year percolating just yet because of that variance. I just don't think it'll be there. What about you? You seemed shocked that my number was a little low. So do you think differently, or are you shocked that maybe we think similarly?
Well, just knowing you, the eternal optimist, I figured it'd be a lot higher. To be honest, it's around like 45, 50% for me, only because we're talking about a sample size of two.
Yeah.
Two. And, one game wasn't good. One game was amazing. Okay. Well, that's two data points. One would be he doesn't make it happen, and the other one suggests that he will make it happen. So that's about 50-50, 45, 50%, somewhere in there. And look, if you ended up around 1,200 yards, I mean, that's doubling his output from last year. That would be a massive leap. So
Yeah.
we'll see. I don't think I get up to 65, 70 on that either. That gets probably closer to like a 55, 60. But things that are encouraging. The way that Ryan Grubb wants to use him. Geno looks like he probably improved over the offseason in that the system seems to fit his skill set very nicely. And like you said, I think Geno has the ability to cover some of the stank of the offensive line at times. He's the poopery. And with that, you combine all that together, and there's reasons to be guardedly optimistic. It's fun.
Yeah, I know, when we sat next to each other at the game, maybe holding hands or not, it's okay.
Yeah.
And we were like, man, we got to run the ball more. We have to run. We have to try to run. And then, I rewatched the game on Monday, and you start, I'm not forgiving the fact that I would like to run the ball more. I'm not giving up on that. And I think with a different running back in there, some of those runs would have hit. And we covered that on 3 and 3 out. And I think Sharps had a nice fourth quarter and then showed up in overtime. With that, though, the way Geno was moving the ball and including those drops, it reminded me, I know this is going to sound like lunacy, but I mentioned the name earlier on the one play, but it looked like a Brady run offense. It was just like, okay, I'm going to process real quickly. I know where to go basically automatically. And every time I uncork it, like I'm accurate and my dudes are open, or at least somewhat open. Dude, that's hard to stop. That is a difficult thing to stop. And okay, Patriots, we'll see. Pretty good defensive backs. They actually have a okay front seven. We'll see against other talent, but dude, I know it might be like some people might blast us. It looked like a Brady run offense for a little bit on the rewatch. I'm not sure if you got those vibes at all, or if I'm smoking stuff because I was tired.
Felt a little more run and shooty to me than it did Brady style offense, because they were taking deeper shots. I would guess, and not that I'm looking this up, it might not be a true fact, but this is my guess. This is what it feels like. It felt like the average depth of target for Geno in that game is much deeper than the Brady ran offense with all the little option routes and the dink and dunk stuff that he would hit and then get you downfield here now and then. You didn't live in the intermediate game. Neither did Peyton Manning. They mainly lived in the short, quick game. Same with Drew Brees. Now, there was a stretch for Drew Brees where he was really hitting it down the field. Probably closer to that, I would say. But you speak about the running, and if you guys want to tune into the flagship show that's popping out tomorrow, little stat for you to marinate on here, Clinton. Our run-pass ratio, we ran it 28% of the time in that last game. 28%. Wow. Last year, about the NFL average was about 55-45. So that lets you know. And then if you also correlate and look at that run pass ratio from last year, almost all the playoff teams short of the Chiefs are in the top half of that in terms of running percentage, and all of the non-playoff teams short of the Chiefs were down at the bottom.
Yeah.
So if you're going to live in 28% run pass ratio, okay, we can try it, but I don't think that is going to be a recipe for success. But if you tune in the flagship show, you find out why I don't think that that's exactly where they want to be.
That's a great tease. So the Seahawkers podcast, long form, the flagship show, will be out tomorrow. We're going to put this out on Wednesday night. So I'm going to get cracking on it so I can edit this and get it out to the flock. That's a great tease. Look, that's a tremendous conversation to go have. And especially in the face of what I appreciate about you and frankly our pod is that we're going to have opinions on how we think football should go. And if the team's not going that way and we're winning, like we could celebrate the win, we could talk about JSN's ascension and still be like, ooh, I don't know if that's going to work in January, and have a legit discussion about that and not be Pollyannas about the way we're playing football. So I'm excited for it. Hope everybody tunes in. Adam, what do the folks listening? What do we want them to do? Need them to do? How could they join and be part of the Hawkra?
Well, first, if you are a YouTube type of person and you consume this sort of content on YouTube, if you don't mind giving us a like, subscribe, that'd be really helpful. And we're super appreciative. Look, because of you guys, we've had a wild 2 weeks and things are just growing by leaps and bounds, and would love to lean into that. And if you are so inclined, please do help out with that. Again, it really does make a difference. Also, if you do like consuming this on the audio side, in an audio format and podcast, you can find the flagship show and a couple of the other little ditties that we do on the Seahawks podcast, anywhere that you get podcasts. We also deliver to you guys about up now. It's going to be up to 6 shows a week now that Brandon and I are doing pick'ems. The majority of those, whether that's our unique preview 3 in 3 out, or our unbelievably unique what if show game preview, whether that's the PNW Prop Stars, the gambling show, which I think is the funnest show in all of Seahawks football. You can find all of those on the Believe network, and the show is called For the Hawkra. And just type that in, you'll find it. And if yours bleed, it's not my fault, but it's still a good time. I don't think you can listen to it with a frown. So check it out there.
Yeah, we like to think it's the most entertaining Seahawks stuff out there, and we're pretty proud of that, right? So we could talk serious, but we also want to have fun, because this is about being a fan and being a 12 with y'all. And for those out there too, if you want to contribute on Patreon, getintheflock.com, we have a tremendous, awesome Discord for as little as $3 a month. You love what we're doing, you want to contribute to it, go to getintheflock.com or join as a YouTube member and do the $3 a month there as well. And we'll get you in the Discord. We are there every single day chatting. We're there all day Sunday in the Sunday Garden. And really the whole Flockers are part of this with us, which is super cool. So Adam, I am fired up to listen to the flagship tomorrow. Then I'm recording with Mr. Phil for our What If, and Brandon for the preview show. And then of course, we'll be seeing you and Brandon live Sunday night for the instant reaction, live and uncatfished, after the Dolphins come to town with Skylar Thompson and team, bud.
Yeah, it's going to be cool. We do a big breakdown on the flagship of the matchup against the freaking fish. I understand they're mammals, but they're still fish. Screw those guys. And I think with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks. That sucks. I'm gonna do that again.
You're a short. Yeah.
Now clip that. Put that out there.